Welcome to the Flip Learning video for your AO2 for the first essay of aggression, social psychological theories. As with all AO2 videos, this is primarily just so that I can talk you through the studies. I don't expect you to have done anything with these. We'll address how you use them, how you put a line of argument together in the lesson. Starting on page 3 then, one of the first pieces of evidence comes from the work of Zimbardo. So Zimbardo asked groups of 4 female students to give electric shocks to another student. And this is very similar to kind of Milgram's condition, a student and a learner, and kind of electric shocking them for getting wrong answers. Participants in the de-individuated condition were never referred to by name, so they didn't have their names associated with them at all. They wore lab coats so that their kind of identity to do with their clothing was all covered, and they wore hoods to hide their faces. They also then had an individuated condition where they were wearing their normal clothes, they were introduced to each other by name, and then they were given name tags to wear as well. So they made it very clear when somebody was individuated and when they weren't. And they found that the participants in that de-individuated condition, even if the person or the participants would describe the learner as honest, conceited, critical, so they actually tried to influence the way the person thought about the participant. De-individuated participants shocked the learner for twice as long as the individuated. So we can see that once de-individuated, it didn't matter what the learner was described as, actually they were much more likely to be cruel. In addition, the validity of the theory is supported by evidence from Diner, obviously it's partly their theory, who observed that antisocial and aggressive acts were more likely to be performed by children who were in a large group and were wearing clothes that concealed their identity. Furthermore, a meta-analysis of 60 studies into de-individuation, conducted by Postman and Spears, indicated that anonymity to outsiders was the key factor that influenced the likelihood of aggressive behaviour. In these studies, the thing that's going to be really key is the argument as to whether public self-awareness or private self-awareness is the most important. However, it could be argued that de-individuation theory lacks validity because it's largely based on experimental studies. All of the studies that we've described previously were experimental in controlled lab conditions. They're asked to perform actions that would be unfamiliar to them and unlikely to be part of their everyday life. This was addressed, however, by Rem, who conducted research into real-life displays of aggression shown by 11-year-olds when they were playing sport. In this condition, they asked half of the players in each team to wear a uniform, and the other half were allowed to just wear whatever they wanted. And they found that the uniform teams were much more aggressive. Although this effect was only apparent for boys, so it might be that there's a gender difference in de-individuation. And cross-cultural research, when looking at warriors, found that in countries where warriors hid their faces, they were much more aggressive than warriors who were open about who they were. For social learning theory, what we're going to be doing eventually is going through these and having a look at what type of evidence they are and how you would use them. But for now, it's just important to acknowledge that social learning theory has a bit of a problem with nature-nurture and ignoring some of the nature. If aggression is due to social learning, then we'd expect different levels in different cultures. So that's just a point to think about. Silverman and Williamson found aggression levels increased more with 4 to 6-year-olds than 7 to 8-year-olds. So it seems to be that younger children are much more susceptible to this. Cooper and Mackey observed the free play, and they observed aggressive video games and found that aggressive behaviour increased in girls but not boys. So again, an idea that maybe there's a gender divide here. It's been found that children who watch violent television programmes are more likely to behave in an aggressive way. So this is kind of trying to bring in some of the media. Lots of it's heavily experimental though, all based on observational learning. So these studies can lack ecological validity. Bandura's Bobo doll obviously is not a living person. Griffiths and Hunt found that older children who played video games reported higher levels of aggression. So again, we're sort of thinking about bringing some of our video game evidence in. And there are examples of societies that are completely non-aggressive. That's going to be an important point in the lesson. Phillips found homicide rates in the US increased in the week following a boxing match, which suggests that once that people have seen an aggressive piece of behaviour, then they imitate it. Social learning theory has got validity in the fact that it can explain differences between and within. So between cultures means that we can tell why some groups are aggressive and some aren't, and we can also tell why some people individually are and aren't. Patterson compared families having at least one highly aggressive child with families who didn't, and found that it tended to be that those children have come from coercive families, again sort of supporting the idea that they come from an environment of aggression. And finally, the work of Margaret Mead looked at 3 different tribes, finding that some were very aggressive, some were very non-aggressive, and others, the men and women, showed different patterns of aggression than we would come to expect. This is an important study because you might use it in gender as well. Thank you.